Hello, everyone, and welcome to Wind, Reel, and Print. My name is Ryan.
And my name is Kevin.
And today, we're doing something a little different.
A little different.
No specific movie on the docket, but we kind of wanted to chat a little bit about how do we watch movies.
Yeah.
And just talking about movie watching in general.
Right.
It seemed like something as we were, especially after the Josh conversation, and I think it was kind of, at least for me, evolved from that, like really thinking about the movie,
right,
the picture, the analysis of it, and knowing like it's actually kind of fun to kind of analyze, and oh my god, analysize it. I'm making it a word now. You know, so when I was doing some analyzing of it, we ended up having some good conversations, and it made sense. Even in the Mumblecore episode, I think we were getting into it as well. So
it's like the form and everything.
And maybe even I think in Just Like Heaven, actually, that one we were talking about a lot too.
Right.
It's something that comes up.
Right.
And so it kind of makes sense to dive into it a little bit.
Exactly.
And I think also, I hope we can get to this point too, but even talking about rewatching and what that does, I imagine we'll get there. But
yeah.
There's something interesting about the act of watching movies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely something that comes up in a lot of different episodes where, like, Funny Games, I think, was another one. And then the Top 4 Redux episode, which, anyways. Or even questioning the Oscars, right? Like, what do you prioritize when you, like, watch a movie? What is the information that you're kind of taking in, and like, how do you define a good movie, a great movie, a bad movie? You know, like, what are you looking for when you're like going through this experience?
Yeah.
And I don't know, like, is there a standard that like you should be looking for, like a rubric, so to speak, or some sort of like grading principle? Like, I think you've mentioned Cinema Sins and like how they grade films in that kind of way, like, or Roger Ebert and Siskel and Ebert, and like the thumbs up, thumbs down thing. Like, what's the proper way of like judging a film and stuff? Yeah. Or I guess even just the question of like, what does it mean to ask the question, how do we watch a movie?
And I feel like I do this on a lot of podcasts that we do, is I kind of jump to the end early. Because I feel like I know. And maybe the journey in these episodes is to kind of, it's my theory, and then we kind of work on it. Man, you're also making me cough too. This is the coughing episode. But at first, like, my visceral reaction is, no way is there one like really way to watch a movie. I think that would be, someone crazy would have to be like, to stick with it. Sure, yeah. Uh-oh, Kevin, I hope I'm not. I'm looking in Kevin's eyes and I'm like, is Kevin about to say, did I just call Kevin crazy? But it seems like so much goes into it. Yeah. There's so many variables, even in just the place you watch it, that it will always color it. It will always do something different. Yeah. I mean, maybe the one best way to watch a movie is just, the human way. Yeah. Just like being there. Right. Present. And if you're present, maybe that, well, then maybe there's also a scale here. Because I'm thinking at least you have to be present, right? Yeah. Like, maybe. You can't be on your phone. Right.
But I don't know I guess it depends on your definition of present.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. This is getting kind of philosophical, but like, because there is, to me, when you're watching escapist movies, are you present? You know what I mean?
You're present for the picture.
I guess. I don't know.
Well, I would say if you are, I think you're getting, didactic. I think you're going way down a rabbit hole. I'm gonna try and keep you up here. Yeah. Okay. Come back.
My head.
No.
Yeah.
Okay, but let's ground ourselves again. Sure. So let's talk about how we watch movies. Yeah. I think that'll be a good place, because we can get real big picture with it, and maybe we'll get there.
Yeah.
But let's talk about
getting ahead of ourselves.
Yes.
Getting ahead of ourselves.
Yes.
So how do you watch a movie, or what do you, I guess, define it as? And
yes. So for me, And I'm actually like, I think it's easiest for me to explain myself kind of in contrast to you in some ways.
Sure.
And maybe it's just in the act of just saying that helps me kind of get
Sure.
to it. But like, I don't think of the picture, like I mentioned this kind of before, like there is the seeing of the image, and it most of the time it really has to hit me over the head to really even make a comment on it. Like,
sure.
Like the composition of a shot. And I think cinematography is like the easiest thing to analyze and acknowledge
yeah.
and talk about, and you know, all of that. So if it doesn't hit me on the head, I feel like what I'm going through is just like I'm just experiencing it. And I thought you had some really good things that you said in the previous one of the previous episodes about just like rewatching and what that's like. And so I hope we get to talk about that again.
Yeah.
But there's something about just that viewing, and there's something about like how I feel in the experience that I relish more than so many of the other things about it.
Sure.
And you know, I'm not gonna lie, that's why I don't rewatch a lot of things, because I do place a lot on the first viewing, and sometimes my first and only viewing, unless we're doing it for the podcast, and you will almost always watch again.
Sure.
But there is something, and I've talked about this before, but there's something also I understand a little toxic about like also wanting to wait like a decade before I watch a movie again, so that I can try to experience that feeling of watching it again, and that feeling of like,
so it's like dislodged out of your mind.
Yeah. Like for me, I especially when it comes to like rewatching, you know, I'm not all that interested in like analyzing every frame, and maybe it's also because I'm not really in the business at the moment, or like even in the mindset of filmmaking. Sure. And especially of fiction filmmaking. Like, right. I think if maybe I was even in more of that world, I would think about it some more. Like I certainly look at like ads and corporate ads and things, and I definitely analyze those differently. Sure. I can only see the form when I watch those. Like I'm just like, how did they shoot this? I totally know how they shot this. Right. I don't feel that way about movies.
Interesting, yeah.
So that is like my general sense of it. Is it's like how does it hit? Yeah. Especially
like the emotional impact.
Yeah. That's kind of what gets me. And I'm a quick crier in a movie, and so that is also something I like. That's something also that I just love about watching movies. Is it just feels like a safe place to do that. Yeah. And it's just like be emotional and be in that space. Sure. And so I think I also really lean into that too. Right. As it's just like
just leaving your emotions good. Open.
Yeah. Like I want a way to feel these deep feelings. Yeah. And movies are like that for me. Sure. And so yeah, it is a really emotional thing more than anything.
Yeah.
And so I'm really trying to not see the form, not see the frame in some ways. Yeah. And to see past that, which is kind of crazy. Especially that we're doing a movie podcast in some ways, because we talk about form and everything, and there's an analysis of it, but I think that kind of comes after for me.
Sure, yeah. That makes sense.
Yeah.
I mean, I think if you were to break it into stages, that makes sense. Like, I think I watch it first out of enjoyment. Like you just want to experience the movie, especially on your first watch, like as a piece of entertainment or as a piece of like experience, you know?
Yeah.
And then after that layer, you're kind of thinking about form. And for me, I kind of live in the idea of form is the reason why you feel this way. So I'm always trying to reverse engineer what those decisions were, I guess, that made me feel that way. You know what I mean? And so I always think of like forms after that. And then, I guess I haven't really thought of it past that.
Yeah.
But, I think that kind of the stages of experience that you go through when watching and rewatching a movie, or even, I don't know.
So this is going to be a really basic question.
Yes.
But what do you think you get out of rewatching a movie? Or like even what do you think you get out of analyzing a movie to this degree?
like
I have an answer for myself, but what is yours?
I think I get like it's like this. A puzzle. It's like a spiritual connection. I don't know what makes sense.
Yeah.
In describing this feeling. Like I just like the idea of figuring out this thing that like made me feel this way. You know?
Yeah.
Like, and so let me like give some context of like why I rewatch. Most of the time when I rewatch a movie, it's because I either loved it or hated it. Like 1 or 2 stars or like 5 stars. Like I need to have a visceral reaction off of the first watch in order for me to like warrant a revisit. Because for you to have such a strong reaction, there must be something going on in that framework that is like triggering those emotions and stuff. And then a lot of the times, if I feel one way and I rewatch it, I end up like flipping back to the other thing or to the other side. So I always remain open when rewatching. Like my opinion rarely matters when I'm watching film, you know, if that makes any sense.
Yeah. You're looking at it as like a thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you're studying the thing.
Yeah. Like a living organism. Yeah. Kind of.
Okay. Because I know that like your past experience.
Right.
Colors the way you see things.
Right. And so, yeah, that's like an interesting aspect of it, right? Is like, I think even your mood when you're watching it affects the way you interpret the movie. So like you could watch a movie 5 different times and watch 5 different movies based on who you were as a person in the grand scheme of life, but also who you were on that day based on what you ate and who you interacted with, you know,
especially what you ate.
Yeah. I think that has such a big impact on,
I genuinely believe that the gut has so much more power than we give it credit for.
Yeah.
Even on a literal sense, but yeah.
For real. No, for real. Like that's why it's so spiritual, like food and cooking and stuff. Yeah. Like it's tied to our psyche and our spirit and yeah. And so like, I think with each glance at this thing, you get a new understanding of it. You know, you can look at so many different pictures of a lion, but you won't understand it until you get the full breadth of like that.
The forest for the trees sort of thing.
Exactly. Yeah. Like seeing it in its real kind of things. I don't know. Like I just like, especially films that I like get emotionally attached to, like I can just live in that space. And oftentimes I can't, if I can figure out a movie in a one watch, bad movie. Like if I can reverse engineer it under, you know, a handful of watches, it's probably not doing its job well enough. It's too straightforward. It's too like easy. Not that easy's bad, but it just, I feel like this form is meant to be deep and complex and like searching for something that we can't write down or draw or anything. Like it has to be like preserved in this amber kind of structure thing that moves in the light sort of like there's something magical that we can't explain only through this exact thing, right? So the films that get to that level of like, oh, I need to watch this 5 times in order for me to even begin to understand it, like that is what I kind of crave for, you know, or that's what I want, like out of a film. Damn,
yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, because like I immediately clung on to, obviously, your very affirmative statement, which makes sense. Those are usually the easiest to question someone on and to talk about. But like that for you need, if you figure it out in one single go.
Yeah.
So for you, it's an exercise in. I guess I don't necessarily know the right way to define or put even words to this.
Yeah.
But like, I'm trying to think of like, and it's just one of those things. I think it's just different for me. Like, I can definitely really enjoy a movie that I totally understand in one go, and isn't necessarily it doesn't have to be the deepest thing in the world, and can even still be a movie,
right?
That has worth,
right. Let me contextualize how I mean by that too, because like even Jaws, right, to me is a movie that does that to me, like trying to understand how that movie makes me feel is a conundrum to me.
Jaws,
yes, like
interesting.
That to me is a great movie, because of the way it's made is making you feel certain ways. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like movies don't do that nowadays, in my opinion. You know, like they don't like take the time and effort to put as much care into a shot or an edit. You know, like that movie to me is like magic. Yeah. In terms of like procuring some experience in my life just purely through like watching this thing. Yeah. Or The Thing, you know? So it's not always about like so much being deep or like poetic or whatever. It is also like trying to understand why an action movie is so interesting to people, or like why this sort of movie is so like appealing to our senses. Some
unexplainable phenomena.
Yes.
That you can't even predict before going into the movie that it will have.
Right.
But you are hit by something you don't even understand.
Exactly.
And then that's also, that kind of drives you. And I guess that makes sense why it's like a 1-star or 5-star.
Right.
That makes you want to rewatch. Because it has some
like level of
to it.
Thing. Yeah.
Well, like, I agree that like mediocrity is like the worst thing.
Yeah.
Being right in the middle, like just
so forgettable.
Be good or bad. You know,
pick one.
Yeah, it's okay to be bad.
Yeah,
it's kind of fun.
It almost makes it better.
Yeah, exactly. It really does. Like people will like your shit more.
Yeah.
If it's bad versus if it's mediocre.
Right. Like if it's bad and it says something, you're doing a good job.
At least it's something different. Yeah. So I see what you mean. I definitely feel like I get that way too. It doesn't make me want to rewatch, like, you know, a recent bad movie I saw was Jurassic World Dominion. Like I watched that and it was so bad to me.
Sure.
And I just remember being like mouth agape, looking at the screen, just like, what is happening? This is crazy. And so I thought even afterwards, like I was like, I want to watch that again. That actually, like, I felt the rewatch want, and then I started rewatching it. And I was like,
turn the fuck off.
Why the hell am I going to put myself through this again? That is crazy. What a waste of time.
Yeah, I mean, you know, you have that. You have that too. Like there's movies that there's this one movie called High Life or High Rise. Mm-hmm. It's an adaptation of this book I read that I really enjoyed. It's pretty much like that Bong Joon-ho movie on the train. I forget what it's called. Snowpiercer. It's kind of like that, but like in a skyrise or like cool. A high-rise building. Yeah. Like I remember watching it when I was in maybe high school or something when it came out, and I hated it. Like within the first 20 minutes, turned it off. And then I watched it again like recently, like in the last like 5 years or so. Like not remembering that I had already seen it. Started watching the first bit. Like, oh, I remember reading this book. I like this book. Put it on. Watched like the first 10, 15 minutes. I was like, oh, I remember this movie. I immediately turned
you shut it off? Oh, wow.
I was like, I don't want to do this again. It's still bad. Like, yeah. I don't know. I don't really have that visceral reaction anymore of like turning off a movie. But yeah, just something about that movie made me like really
interesting. But that sounds like that's a reason for you to rewatch it.
Yeah, maybe.
Because it does...
Like all the way through?
Yeah, I mean, it does really grind your gears. You know?
It must be something. Yeah, the formal aspects. I mean, there was a time where I like prioritized writing above everything. And that if it wasn't well written, then...
Oh, I see. In the watching, yes.
Yeah, like it wasn't a good movie. But I've slowly chipped away at that, and in learning like cinematic form and like what is truly important to like the movie watching experience. You know what I mean?
What is truly important to you in the movie watching experience? You just made that easy. And I mean in the sense like you're talking about, so it's not writing. So what is it?
Yeah.
And even if you don't know it...
No, I know. I'm
just search for it.
I'm letting the dramatic pause sit. I think I really... I take a lot of these principles from Guillermo del Toro and the way he speaks about film in his interviews and stuff like that. So when I say a lot of these things, half the time I'm like quoting him.
Respect.
Just putting it out there.
Yeah.
Yeah, respect. Exactly, respect.
We put respect on Del Toro's name in this house.
Yeah, exactly. So he kind of talks about comparing to the like criticism of paintings or like our discussions with paintings. Like you don't look at this painting and say, this is so messy. Like I don't get it. Like there's no one storyline. Like who do you focus on?
Yeah.
Who's the character that I am supposed to attach to?
Kevin is pointing at, I have a painting of the Garden of Earthly Delights for anyone that knows that by Hieronymus Bosch. It is absolutely insane. So I know that you might even be like just saying things and just using that as like a prop.
Yeah.
But also everything you're saying does all kind of apply to this, which is, it's insane.
Yeah. And so you could use those same criticisms on like an Altman movie or a Tarantino movie, right? But does that take away from the film? Like, are we supposed to understand this painting through the context of story and narrative, you know, the way we like digest cinema? So he argues that like we shouldn't be looking at a film and being like, oh, I don't get like the story, or like it was too boring or too slow or something. Like we should be looking at like the way the camera is expressing emotion, or the way this cut is different than if they put a different shot here, or like the way that moment when the music comes in, why put it there versus like here or here? You know, how does that affect the rhythm or whatever of the movie and stuff like that? Like we should be discussing those things versus like why the story was like this or too long or blah 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 blah.
What are your thoughts when the filmmaker cares about the story?
I think the story is like a bonus add-on, and if it's good, it's like a pat on the back. I don't think it's like an achievement in like whatever.
Well, I guess even my question to go even deeper is like, does filmmaker intent go into at all the watching of the movie? Like if the filmmaker intended for the story to be good and they cared about doing a 3-act structure movie that was like, and they failed at it, does that color it at all? Do you think?
No. Because if it's bad, it's bad.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'd like to think every filmmaker is intending to make a good movie.
Oh, I'm so sorry. There's no way that's true.
I don't know.
I mean, I don't necessarily. I mean, there are people out there. I don't. You know, I. You know, you can't say how big they end up becoming or not, but that the last thing they care about is making a good movie.
Yeah, maybe.
Movies are like a thing to people. They're not art to a lot of people.
For sure.
Yeah, for the majority of like movies that are made, they're kind of just like to keep the machine moving. Like think about all the Tubi movies and all of these like just like all this, the world is just filled with crap. Don't you think?
Yeah, but I don't know if that's, I don't know. I think, I don't know if that's like a cause and effect of like, I don't think, like, that's what I kind of mean, I guess, is that like, I don't know if intent necessarily translates to like, the end result.
Yeah.
Oh man. I'm kind of saying this with a caveat of like I'm thinking about this as I'm saying it.
All right, here we go.
Yeah, just I feel like because the surplus of content should almost support this idea, right? Is that like if you had 100 people in the room and they all intended to make a good movie, that kind of means nothing, because I don't know if intent necessarily translates into execution or discipline or experience and like, you know,
I'd say it definitely doesn't. Like there's no,
you know what I mean?
Yeah, I don't think there's really a correlation there, because you could be the most driven person and not be able to make
suck
a good
at
movie.
everything.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. Like that's an absolute possibility.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I guess that's where I mean of like,
and that's intent versus. So I see what you mean. Like they could intend to make a good movie, but it could not be good. But it still is interesting to be like to say like story is just fluff.
It's.
And
this is like a more film critic. I guess this is a film critic conversation.
Yeah.
Like okay, to me, so like the way Robert Altman kind of frames this is that like film derives from other art forms. Historically, when we started creating stories for film, they still come from theater and novels and these other things that predate the cinematic form.
Which is also why like early movies are like vaudeville acts and things like that. Like there was a very easy just like point a camera at things too.
Right.
Of just like things that already existed.
I mean, that's like the very easy way of seeing that.
Yes.
But then you could make an argument that's the same for music biopics, right? Or like
I mean, anything based on a true story is like easy pickings. Not to say anything else is easy, but at least it makes it easy to choose what to make a story about.
Exactly. And so music biopics to me is like the easiest way of talking about this, because it does it in a very simple way. It's like we only think of story in 3-act structure, because that's kind of like the algorithm we're raised with, and that's like kind of the narrative understanding that we are ingrained with, what just like all media that we consume. And so when you look at the progressions of film, I feel like film is always in a battle of escaping that like prison of narrative like structure. Mm-hmm. And that like it's always meant to thrive in another mode of storytelling that doesn't make sense in this other thing.
Yeah.
That we are kind of latched onto because we're programmed into it, or whatever. And so I feel like the more you disengage from the the word I want to say is shackles of 3-act structure, you know, the more you can like search for emotional truth in your film. You know, yeah, that can lead to another discussion too on like catharsis and that kind of stuff. Because I don't think catharsis is a good thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Huh. And that's very interesting.
Yeah,
But I also think like a lot of what we're saying can't really be wrong.
Yeah.
Either. You know.
Yeah.
Like
for sure. All of it is opinion. And
yeah. It feels that way too because like there's a lot of things I'm like, oh my gosh, I feel so different. And we talked about this earlier, like this idea, like, you know, how it's the easy way to be like, oh my god, I don't feel that, so that's not real. They're wrong. Right. And like you can apply that to like everything in life.
Right.
And that's one of these things where I'm like, oh, this is so. I and part of me is like I almost don't give that much. Like I used to care so much about story, and I think that ends up kind of being an inhibiting thing.
Right.
And I think mumblecore was helpful in being like
breaking away.
Like it's just a thing. I do think editing matters. You know, I think the placing together and the creating of the form is important because it's maybe it isn't necessarily a movie otherwise.
Like
you at least need editing.
In the vein of what I'm saying, I guess editing is the writing of the movie.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It's like you're placing these syntaxes and sentences together into like one giant piece.
Yeah.
You know.
It feels like editing is what makes it a movie.
Yeah.
Because like and like
you're
the
creating
videography
meaning.
And the audio are almost like the paints and the brushes and the things, and then you need a canvas as well, and you need all these things, and then you throw it all together. But then imagine if you had to place all those paintings like that. What makes a painting into a movie is the editing. Yeah, I think. Yeah,
for sure. Yeah,
that's an interesting to kind of dig down on that.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's interesting that still. I mean, I'll go into this afterwards and think about it some more. But yeah, it's still like there's something interesting.
Like to me, the story should be a part of the design and not like the forefronted thing that I'm thinking about when I'm watching the movie. Yeah, if that makes any sense. Yeah. It's like showing, not telling, sort of thing.
Absolutely, it's like we don't need to be I think the obvious thing is just to spoon feed the audience into like this thing, and it's like, wow, I'm not that stupid. I don't really. Yeah, and obviously, I much prefer to be kind of told in a cinematic way versus like told through dialogue. Right. Now, when both of them collide, that's cinema.
Yeah. So, and I think there's a distinct difference between like because you could look at mumblecore and be like, well, that's not cinematic or, you know, not whatever. And it's all dialogue, right?
I'm like, who's saying that? I'm gonna send them a message.
But I mean, even then it's like the dialogue is part of the design of the films, of those films too, you know, like, I feel like when you look at dialogue heavy movies, it's another paintbrush aspect to the thing. Yeah. It's not like trying to explain away parts of the movie that the camera is not doing, you know? And I think that's like maybe the big difference between like what we're talking about. Yeah. 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 Of like, having dialogue versus lots of camera and stuff. 'Cause like having too much of both, it isn't necessarily a good or bad thing. It's just like how you're using it and applying it to story, if that makes sense. Yeah. Right?
I think so. I'm trying to wrap all this up again. Yeah. Because I feel like I'm floating right now in this weird amorphous like, oh my god, anything is possible and nothing is possible, and there's all
exactly
of this,
that's kind of the
and is that maybe.
That's kind of
what it like, because even for me, it's almost like. I mean, and I guess everyone's the same way when they watch a movie the first time. You kind of get hit by it more than anything. Yeah. And that's kind of like the magic of movies too, is that it has that ability to do that, to completely and capture your attention, or just capture your attention. Yeah. And all that. But yeah. Yeah.
And I attribute this this thinking to why I can rewatch movies more is because I don't care about what happens in the movie. In fact, a lot of times I don't even think about it. Like, yeah, some of these movies I can't remember what happens in the movie, but I can remember how it made me feel and like certain images and shots and stuff. Like when I rewatch a movie, I'm thinking about those things more, than the story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that does feel interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. I realize there's a lot more thinking I need to do about this, and it's also like, I mean, literally in like the sense of like a podcast episode about this.
Yeah.
It's like, what is what are we looking for in this?
Right.
It's kind of an interesting space to be in, is as kind of the first kind of episode like this too, is like thinking about this form.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess these things just are.
Yeah. I mean, it's
how do we watch a movie?
Because there is, I think, broadly speaking, like when I think about like the ways of watching a movie, if I were to try to like define what that phrase means, like I think there is different, like I think what I'm talking about is like, I don't know, like I guess the sin of this it's a mode of cinephile like perspective on film, I guess. If
Totally.
You know, like understanding the form, the way the form and content produce like emotional connection with the audience, I guess, is like that seems like a very film critic, like a film theory sort of perspective, I guess.
Yeah.
And then there's like, I know people look at films through its historical accuracy or
who's acting in it.
Yeah.
Like they just see that part of it.
Right. Like just the act. Yeah, exactly. Like, oh my God, yeah.
Yeah, that grinds your gears.
Yeah.
That really grinds your gears.
I could never watch a movie just for like the actor, I think.
Yeah, it always seems like such an interesting thing.
Yeah.
I mean, it was like such a big thing back in the day.
Before any of us were ever born.
Yeah. And it just does not, it certainly doesn't get me in, I mean,
doesn't get me in
some
the
ways,
seat.
I mean, I didn't go see Kinds of Kindness in theaters, sadly. But like
a director.
Hearing Emma Stone and Yorgos Lanthimos are working together, it has me interested.
Yeah,
you know,
for sure.
But if
that's
I just
like a
know,
director, though.
Yeah, exactly. It has to be like, and because I really like Emma Stone, but I'm not necessarily down to watch like any movie Emma Stone is in. Maybe a little bit more because it seems like she is selective.
Yeah.
But like when it comes to other actors and things, it's like, oh my gosh,
Right.
I'm not gonna watch every Ryan Gosling movie.
Right.
Like even though I like him in some things, that's not. Yeah.
Yeah. Like having that attachment to the face.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, that feels like a very, there's just levels to the depth that people even see movies.
Yeah.
Like some people only see a Captain America movie.
Right.
Like they don't see past it being Captain America or comics or whatever.
Yeah. Like there's people talking about just like if it was cool or
yeah, exactly.
fun or
it is
had cool moments or something. Yeah.
Yeah, it is funny when people just kind of like parrot like exactly what a scene is in a way,
right.
Or just like and literally take no analysis of it other than like just like what happened.
Right.
Does feel like an interesting way to take it, and I think that there are some movies that need to be watched like that because
sure.
That's the only way to enjoy them in some cases is to like not care so much.
Right. Yeah, and I think
do you think that's true?
No.
Well, there you go. I mean, certainly it's true. It's helpful to enjoy a movie that is bad is to not think about so much, right? I mean, not to say whether it's something you would do or whatever, but to just enjoy it from a from an objective?
I don't know. I feel like you can watch any movie and apply these ideas to it. Because even a bad movie, you can still tinker with like the way it's made and stuff, or like figuring out, like with Cat in the Hat.
Yeah,
I feel like there was a lot of discovery in terms of like how that movie got made, like its place within the industry, and then like what the message is and stuff like that. And that's like an inherently bad movie. Like a lot of people think that's like a terrible movie. I mean, yeah. But like, I don't know.
I see what you mean.
I feel like you can. I don't know.
I guess I just think like, especially when it comes to like a Marvel movie, I have to like lobotomize myself to enjoy it.
I feel like I can enjoy a Marvel movie.
By analyzing it?
Yeah.
Wow, okay.
I can, well, I don't know. That's what I mean. I feel like I can watch a movie in different ways. Like, I don't know if this has any merit or whatever, but my friend told me like, oh, like, I'm just like, had a difficulty understanding that I like movies I rate 2.5 stars.
Yeah.
Or that I put a heart like on a bad quote unquote bad movie. But to me, that's like I can enjoy a movie that is objectively bad.
Yeah.
But like, I guess like in a way you are turning your brain off to enjoy it.
I mean, I don't
more or less, but I still feel like you can apply some sort of formal discussion to it of like why it is that way.
Yeah.
And like why you think it's bad, but also why it ends up being entertaining to some degree too. I don't know. I feel like you can overanalyze everything, and I get a kick out of overall.
I think that's what it comes down to. I think there are some movies where like thinking more about it makes me dislike it more.
But I feel like that's the point of trying to go down that thing.
Well, sure. But, yeah, and I guess all I was thinking was like I might enjoy it a little bit more, but I see. But I appreciate. I mean, the reason why I do this podcast and the reason why we're doing a lot of these things is like for me, it's just like I really enjoy the work that goes into analyzing it.
Sure. Yeah.
But sometimes it would feel good to be dumb, you know, and there is some like ignorance is bliss in some ways. Like
I don't know. I think I get a more. For me, I get a more like fruitful experience out of life by like being critical like this. Not even just with film, but in everything in my life.
Yeah.
Like I try to apply these sorts of thinking to like the architecture of the building I'm in, or like the food I'm being served.
Yeah.
You know, like why is it like this? Like, could it be better? Like the conditions that I'm in, I don't know. Like, I feel like it's a good way of engaging with your surroundings and your environment and your, to some degree, community and, you know, whatever. I don't know.
I respect it. For me,
isn't that like?
I wish I could turn off sometimes. That's all.
Yeah.
But I think that's what's great about we just have different. I mean, we're just different on
wired.
This.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're just wired differently.
Wired differently. Yeah. I can't stop it, so I like it, and it's fun to me.
I mean, in most cases, I am forced to analyze. Like that's the only that's like the only setting I have. Is analyze.
Yeah.
So I don't necessarily have that, and I can't even like really point to, but like I cannot enjoy a Marvel movie because I am analyzing it too much.
I see.
But I also I'm also not really wanting to waste my time to like lobotomize and turn my brain off either. Like I'd rather be able to be critical and think deeply about it. But
yeah. I mean, there's moments for everything too. I would say, like I think I turn my brain off more when I rewatch something I've already seen.
Oh, really?
Times. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Because then I'm living. I don't know. It's weird, dude. when I came back from that job, I like went to pick up my cat, and so I stayed at my parents' house for a little bit, and I watched Bug's Life, but I wasn't watching it like coherently. I was like in and out of sleep. But like I've seen that movie so many times, I can like remember that movie. So it feels like I watched the whole movie. But I don't know, because I have such a familiarity with it, I can be more distant with it mentally. Yeah. I don't know if that makes sense. But
I think what we are getting at too is that there is this amorphous thing that is kind of in the making of, like, I don't know, and maybe that's also like part of this, the wider mission of the podcast is like understanding this thing more.
Yeah.
It's like the crystal within.
Right. Yes. Do you have more?
Yeah, I mean, I can keep embellishing.
Because I feel like what we're talking about, this idea of spectatorship, is a huge part of film theory in terms of understanding where meaning derives from.
Yes. And maybe that's where I'm tripping up too.
Yeah, like, And I think that's where your question about author intent is trying to drive at too, is like, does authorship define the film, like the auteur, or does the viewer define the film? And, you know, that's like an open-ended question. Like film theorists have either side of the thing. But, you know, I think that's where this is almost kind of coming ahead to, is like, I think the answer of this question is like, or I don't know, the spectator defines the movie, right? Yeah. Or like holds a lot of responsibility in terms of like determining what the meaning of this movie is, in my opinion. Yeah. Like, I don't think you can look at anything else and try to find what the meaning of the movie is, aside from who's watching it. Yeah. You know? Yeah.
Yeah, I think that, and that's what makes it like an insane task to try to make a movie for everyone or whatever. And that's what makes a movie for no one in a lot of ways. Like, it just makes like the mediocrity thing that we talked about. Like, pick a lane and do something. And because once again, the way your movie is going to be interpreted can go a million different ways.
Right. And that whole Mr. Beast mentality of like, make it for everyone. Yeah. Like, that is a direct antithesis to the make the personal universal. Yeah. Which is like a founding principle in cinema, I feel like. Yeah. Like every great filmmaker ushers that message into the world. Yeah.
Yeah, it's one of the true, and this is something we got to start to write, like the commandments of cinema as we're making it through, because that's one of them. Yeah. It's sure. Like that's so vital and important, and like almost like in every time you hit that button, it's a good one. Yeah. You know, or at least a good is also like an insane thing to say. It is a true thing. Like, pure. It is, like that's all you really want. Right. Like, it could be good, it can be bad. You can enjoy it, you can not enjoy it. That's also not like about what it's about either. Right. It's just about how, like, and the whole point of even this episode is like, how do you take in the movie? Yeah. How do we each take in the movie? And it's like letting our brain just like analyze the hell out of this. Right. Is wild.
Yeah. It's just letting whatever your interpretation of the world clock in the information that's
and that's why rewatching is good. Yeah. Or like it is a useful exercise in like in just kind of I don't know. I guess it's just something to cut against when you watch a movie that you remember as a kid, and then you watch it again just to like have something to feel. Yeah. Whether that goes in any direction, I don't know. So yeah, I guess like.
You have a question?
Yeah, I think I want to end on this. Why do we do this podcast? Because I think it has to do with how we watch movies. I think we both like watching movies.
Yeah, I like watching movies a lot.
Yes. And so I think that I mean, this podcast is obviously an extension of that. For me, it's an excuse to watch movies.
Yeah.
That's one reason I really like doing this. And I like talking about that because I also think movies there's a reason to talk about them.
Yeah.
And they have that special quality. And it probably comes from me, like my feeling on it is like, because I watched so many movies from a young age and I like feel in like 90 minutes, like I know that time, like that is how my emotions move, is like in that amount of time, like a movie time.
Sure.
That it's, there's a connection to it.
Yeah.
And it's interesting to like watch these movies and now watch them like in the wind reel and print theater.
Yeah.
You know, because that is like putting on our spectacles to watch a movie. And that,
for sure,
I watch a movie differently.
So
doing this podcast.
What makes a rap movie different than a normal movie for you?
Are you talking about in like, how does watching a movie in the rap way look different? Or how does a movie that works well with rap or something different?
How does like when you watch a movie for the podcast, how's that different than when you watch a movie normally?
I think I'm probably more critical. You know,
in what ways though?
I think in a film analysis standpoint or a film historical standpoint, and in a like an understanding of the medium in some ways, and like how it fits in it. I think about films more historically now.
As like a moment in history.
Yeah, as like a, funny haha is amazing, even though it isn't like the most, like, it isn't the greatest looking movie or sounding movie ever. Right. But it does something, and it is a movie, and it also is interesting because it is in the line of history of movies, and you can connect it. Right. So I think I come at it now with like thinking about it historically. I think I do try to, when I watch it, try to think about, obviously I think there's the basic things like, oh, this would be interesting to talk about. I want to hear Kevin's take on this. Perspective on this. There's also just like a what the fuck factor of like, oh my God, especially when it comes to like either of us like choosing a movie. It's just like, what was Kevin thinking? Or I imagine there might, like, maybe we haven't made it there yet because I don't know. But I mean, there's definitely going to be a me like of like, what was Ryan thinking? Like saying this sort of thing. Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, or like as a take or as a movie recommendation.
Yeah. As a movie like
Chitty Bang Bang.
Priscilla, Queen of the Desert. Like that was something that I was kind of like rooting for, and that was like obviously that was like a viscerally not enjoyable watch in some ways.
Sure.
But so that's how, I don't know. I think that I just kind of watch it more with a knowing, because I used to watch movies with just like a take it in and go on with my day. There wasn't really like an analysis of like, I want to, this isn't necessarily putting pen to paper, but this is still the exercise of like reanalysis of the picture. And so before, it was like absorb. Sometimes I have the 1001 movies to see before you die. So a lot of times it'd be like absorb, read the little blurb, mark the checkbox, done. Now I've added it to my list. I collected it like a Pokemon.
Yeah. Like interesting.
Yeah. And even though this has an assignment quality to it, it's more than that.
Well, we have to talk about it.
Yeah, exactly. Like I can't just be like, I can't literally just let it leave my mind, and saying it's leaving my mind is it's overblown. But
like there are films that can leave your mind pretty quickly.
Yeah.
In terms of like, oh, it's pretty forgettable. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like Chitty Chitty Bang Bang. But it makes me think of like how I used to watch movies in high school.
Yeah.
Like we would go to the theater, and then afterwards we would sit in our cars, smoke weed, and like talk about the movie, what we thought about it, like Google what other people are saying about it, like what does that shit mean, like what did you think the ending meant, like we would hash out all the shit like together and stuff, and that was always like part of going to the movies for us. So I feel like I've maybe always had this kind of discussion of like trying to figure out what a movie is doing and stuff. And then that my follow-up question is like, what is your relationship with film theory and film analysis? Because I know you went to kind of film school-ish.
Yeah.
So like, were you guys watching a lot of movies in school? Were you writing a lot about movies and in class, like talking about movies and stuff? Like what? Yeah. Like how did you engage with film in an academic setting?
I think that I didn't watch as many movies as I would think a film school would watch.
Yeah.
Like I was technically in a film school. Now, was it like, it was kind of small, you know, is it a school like where geology is the most like, is like the best degree there. And so it was, it was different, but so like, and for me, I ended up getting a degree in screenwriting and producing. Like I had a dual emphasis in those things.
Nice.
So I've always thought of story as being like the thing that was most important. And that's why for a long time, like CinemaSins was like something I enjoyed.
Right.
Because if I could poke a hole in the story, gotcha, like that's understanding a movie is when you know that they made a goof. Right. You know? And obviously, I do not agree with that now. I think it's actually like really terrible to watch movies in that way.
Yeah,
to notice like those sorts of things, and like it's just like that's such a, I don't know. Like, I don't have a lot of respect for that.
Yeah.
So it is really surprising the movies I did not watch in college. And I ended up like just watching a number of things on my own, and was definitely a little more, had more depth of film knowledge than most people.
Right.
That I was around.
Like in school?
Yeah, in school. Just because I had an interest in it, and it was something I was really like trying to watch a lot of and trying to gain some understanding of, and I was really into writing, and so I just kind of wanted to be in that space and to understand movies in that way, and it was like one of those things where it's as soon as you like really like understand 3-act structure, for example, then you see all movies in that way, and then it was interesting to watch movies with that in mind, and to be like, oh my god, I can break this down into a Blake Snyder beat sheet, no problem, and so that ends up being interesting. And then at a certain point, it wasn't interesting.
Right. Yeah. I mean, yeah.
Yeah.
That just made me think of another thing, but it's not related to the discussion, so I'm trying to pull back. Damn it.
I mean, I can throw it back at you. I mean, I like... So for you, how do you watch movies with the wrap lenses on?
Yeah. It's a funny question because I don't think of it different.
Yeah.
Because to me, I watch movies the same regardless of where I'm at or who it's for or whatever. I feel like I'm always thinking about these things always. And I treat movies in this sort of like the way we've been kind of treating it. Like it's a religion. Yeah. It's like super important. Like if I'm sleepy and I can't give my full attention to a film, aside from Bug's Life, but like, you know, if it's like a first watch and like I'm not able to make it through, like I'll take the time to wait and like I'll watch it when I'm more aware or whatever. Because I don't know if I'm answering the question, but it's important to me and I treat it highly all the time.
Yeah.
Like I want to give it my full energy. And to me, full energy means thinking about it, analyzing it, understanding it, and also like feeling it too, you know, at an emotional level. And like, yeah, like I don't know. I feel like that stuff is important to me, and that's why I like this rap thing, because it feels like a disciplined like act of watching movies.
Yes.
You know, which I missed from being in school. Which is, that's like, I come from a lot of critical studies classes that like analyze literature and and then we get into film and stuff. And so like that's just like how I think of the world. Really is like analyzing the like what this means within history and like how we got here, and then like the political aspects and the social like effects into society.
Yeah,
like, you know, I'm like always just trying to like attribute meaning to whatever is in front of me.
Yeah.
You know? Like even when I watch like television or sports, like when I watch live sport, I love watching live sports because the editing is so cool to me. Like they do that in real time. There's, you know,
insane. It's
crazy. And to me, that's like an art form I will never be able to understand, because that's like its own thing that has its own processes and stuff. Like, but it's always interesting trying to figure out like, oh, what made them choose to go to that angle versus this angle? And like, I kind of like this one camera. Why don't they just stay here for a little bit? Like, I don't know, like asking myself these questions when I'm watching like almost everything I think of this when I watch commercials too. Like you were talking about, like I was kind of notorious as a kid for only watching the Super Bowl ads and not watching the game.
Yeah.
Because like I was so enthralled in like the art of this 20-second or 1 minute thing that like felt bigger and more interesting than all the other ads that were on TV and stuff. Yeah, I don't know. I think about a lot of these things, I guess.
Yeah. No. Yeah. Yeah, and I think I definitely think of a lot of these things critically too.
Right.
It definitely bleeds into a lot of different things.
Right.
But this makes me be like, damn, I got a good co-host. That's exactly what I'm looking for. This is why I made a podcast with Kevin. Because this is ingrained so deep inside.
Yeah, like I can't help it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And that's why I think these, like, you know, we're fucking an hour in on a random conversation about whatever.
Yeah, I hope folks have enjoyed this, because I certainly have felt my mind melting.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
for sure. Yeah, I could go on forever, because this is like hitting everything.
It's very interesting.
Yeah,
and I mean, I think it's the nature of these kind of episodes too, is that like is having like the release of the conversation, and then like. Then
it just goes wherever.
Out.
Yeah.
Huh. I love it.
Sounds good.
Well, there we go, folks. We started with how do we watch a movie, and I think we got there.
Yeah.
I think we got there.
For sure.
You know?
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. We talked. I think we got there. Yeah.
Yeah. I think we got there. Well.
I'm tired.
Yes. It's been a long one, folks. It's been a long week.
Yeah.
I think it's time to sign off. We appreciate everyone. Thank you all so much for being here. And that's a
wrap.
Bye-bye.
Wind Reel in Print is a podcast by Salad Brain Productions. You can find us on Instagram at Wind Reel in Print Pod. You can also find us wherever you get your podcasts. And please, if you like the show, leave a rating and review.